Chapter 167 to 169. Now. Dai. Zarbon yelled as he prepared to pierce Ginger's belly with a spear hand. However, as almost always happens after the villain's unnecessary speech, the hero was in charge of preventing his plan. Plaf. In this case this hero was Yam, who after healing her wounds and recovering her energy thanks to the senzu bean she was able to regain consciousness after a few seconds. And heroically she intervened in Zarbon's attack, being the one who received Zarbon's spear hand, being pierced in the stomach by that attack. San. The dying Ginger tried to exclaim when she saw how her sister had saved her life again. How? Zarbon yelled, who was very confused by what had just happened. He had killed the wrong scion, whom he believed to have killed before. However Yam, still pierced by Zarbon's arm, wasn't dead. It was just the opposite. Her eyes had never shone and burned with such determination. With that battle cry, Yam gripped the arm that pierced his body to prevent her from moving even a millimeter, and with his legs she caught Zarbon's neck, performing a judo immobilization and strangulation from which for some reason he couldn't escape. Nei-san. Why? I was supposed to protect you this time, Ginger thought through tears as she saw someone else, especially the one she loved the most and the one she had promised to protect now that she was affected by that curse, had sacrificed herself for her again. I hate it. I hate being so weak. Who did you say you were going to exterminate? Yam yelled as she spat blood from her mouth onto Zarbon's face. Ag hug hi ag. Shit, I can't. I can't move or breathe, she got me. How is it possible? How can she be doing this? How can she still be alive? This is insane. Stammered and thought Zarbon as less and less oxygen reached his brain. Ha 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 ha. This is very funny. I can't end my own life, but I didn't even need to think for a second to sacrifice my own life for my loved ones. My pride as a scion has been taken, but my warrior blood burns through my veins like never before. I cannot kill you, nor allow others to kill you, but I will gladly leave you half dead while I lose my life to make sure that someone else kills you without my preventing it, Yam said as she spat blood from her mouth in each sentence with a totally insane face and gaze. She was in a state on the border between the madness produced by her desire to kill and revenge, and the rectitude produced by the genuine desire to protect her sister and her beliefs at the cost of her own life. Nei-san, no. Stop, you still can. Ginger cried out in tears as much as she could, even though her broken ribs were piercing her lungs and could barely breathe. Ginger, if I don't kill him by accident, after I knock him out, even if you have to crawl and bite him off, do it. You are my dear little sister after all, I know you can. Please. Said Yam, who kept spitting blood at the same time that she kept ruthlessly strangling Zarbon, saying goodbye to her sister with the kindest and most touching face that she had ever shown to anyone. An unnatural face in this moment of gore and tragedy. Fu, CK. Zarbon thought that due to the lack of oxygen reaching his brain he almost lost consciousness. And thanks to that momentary disconnection of his brain before reoxygenating slightly, his transformation was interrupted, returning once again to his original form. Buajjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjjj AJJJ Anga. And when the transformation was cancelled, Zarbon's body also shrank, thus being able to free his jammed arm and escape from Yam's deadly grip, which lost too much blood because she lacked the plug that covered her deadly wound. No. HHGGGH Ginger shouted with true despair and sadness as she spat blood upon see that her sister's noble sacrifice was also useless. And while Zarbon tried to catch his breath, AGGHH Wog, after getting fresh air, he returned with his hate speech, fucking monkeys. I will not forgive you. I'm going to break your useless sister in front of you before you bleed to death. But before he could try to do what he stated. Bam! He received the impact of a key sphere in the back. It was Rashi, with his stomach also pierced because of Zarbon, that's what was popular that day, who after seeing Yam's heroic spirit couldn't stay stretched, lengthening his agony. So from the ground he used most of his remaining energy to stab an enemy in the back, an enemy who considered him dead. However, that little energy was unable to finish Zarbon despite his injuries and energy expenditure. Are you also alive? Damn roaches. I'm going to. Zarbon yelled as he pointed his hands at his two pierced and dying enemies to incinerate them finally with an energy attack. With the firm intention of killing both at the same time. But for the umpteenth time that day. There was another last-minute interruption. Kienzin. Garlic Cannon. One of them was Krillin, who after seeing that he was unable to do anything in the battle against the Jinyu force, came to where Rashi was, arriving just in time to cut off Zarbon's arm with which he intended to kill his sensei. And at the same time and in an almost synchronized way, Vegeta, who had just killed Kiwi far from there as in the official version, and after that he came to this place where to his surprise there were old friends and enemies. Therefore, he decided to be of help to his former allies, disintegrating the distracted Zarbon with his most powerful attack at that time. Aha! Heroes are supposed to appear at the last moment. Sorry Krillin. Rashi said as the light in her eyes gradually faded, knowing that at least one of his friends had survived and had even extended his life for a few more seconds. Master Rashi. This is a nightmare. You too. Krillin shouted with tear-filled eyes and the feeling that his heart was about to stop. Such was his desolation that he even ignored the presence of Vegeta, who also ignored him, since he had more important things to do. Yai. Hell, lo. Yam said, dying from the ground, using all her remaining strength to speak with Vegeta, who saw how her life gradually faded with every word that came out of her trembling and bloody mouth. Yam, you better not talk. Vegeta said when he saw that one of the people that he had minimally appreciated died in front of him, realizing that he was somewhat sad about that after what happened on Earth. But Yam ignored that useless advice. She knew she would die whether she spoke or not, but at least she wanted to die with the least possible regrets. Vegeta. Tell me. Have I been shame as a scion? You not. You defended our honor until the end. Well done. Vegeta said, being kind and considerate for the first time in his life. But the truth is that he wasn't lying either. After what had happened on Earth due to Gohan's curse and supposed betrayal, Vegeta had practically banished Yam from his mind. She had become useless to him, a broken toy incapable of breaking other toys. The only reason he didn't remove her from the list of people not to kill was because of the ferocious Yam who still lingered slightly in his memory and certain male instincts. But after witnessing and hearing, thanks to the tracker, all that Yam had accomplished despite having Jin's deadlift, Gohan's curse, and fighting enemies stronger than herself with such courage, brutality, and determination. With some sadness and bitterness. Vegeta found impossible not to admit that he was wrong. Yam was and always would be an incredible Scion warrior. Glad to hear it, from you. Yam said, dying with a sad smile on his face. Ni-san, no. Don't leave me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't fight alongside you. Forgive me. No. I am the one who has no forgiveness, Ginger cried as she crawled across the floor, being practically unable to move, trying to reach her sister's corpse. This was a completely bleak picture. On that battlefield, 4 corpses lay on the ground. 2 of them belonged to 2 heroes, who died sacrificing themselves for others to live, and next to them, kneeling in front of their bodies, 2 friends/relatives mourned their loss and sacrifice. Only 2 people were left standing. One of them Vegeta, who was trying to prevent Yam's death from affecting him, so, without forgetting his objective, he tried to turn the page and focus on the future. Hey you, bald dwarf, if you're here that means that. Plath. However, he wasn't able to finish his sentence, since when he tried to see the sad and scared Krillin face, it was replaced by a blood geyser, which gushed out from his neck. What? Vegeta yelled in terror as he realized someone had been beheaded in front of him and hadn't even realized it. I told you wouldn't run away, little. Although you have been very fast with that ability of yours, said Berter, who chased Krillin as promised and without further ado ripped off his head at full speed while making his appearance. And seeing that tall, ugly, and blue character in quite distinctive armor, Vegeta realized that this was an extremely risky situation. Shit, the Jinyu force. I have to. Plash. But he wasn't even able to finish that thought or put himself in combat position as his instinct told him, since he was pierced in the back by Berter and his extreme speed. No, it can't be. I didn't even see him move, Vegeta thought as he watched Berta hold his heart in his hand and crush it, dying insignificantly in the process. Yes, Toriyama hates Vegeta and I follow his will. Okay, 2 less, Berter said as he wiped the blood off his hand and pointed the other at Ginger, who didn't even notice that 2 people around her had died. I wanted to say 3 less. Ha 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 ha. And now go back to the others. I hope they aren't done with all the fun yet. Yoo-hoo. Jinyu force. Berta shouted while making a ridiculous pose for the umpteenth time and disappeared from that battlefield to return with his companions. On that same planet. something far from there but not too far. Boom. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Boom. Goku and Frieza had their combat the same as the others, also fought in different places on the planet. Ho 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 ho. Nothing bad. I admit that you are quite strong. If I had fought against you with my other involutions, I could have had a very bad time. You should be proud. You have made me use 20% of my power, Frieza said with his usual arrogant and evil smile, with which he mocked Goku and magnified himself despite making it seem like a compliment. I see. Broly told me several times that you were much stronger than me. But I didn't know that the difference was so great. Goku said, trying not to let Frieza's words and arrogant attitude affect him. Both fought for a short time, but very intensely. In this short time interval they exchanged hundreds of blows, using various strategies to corner, weaken, reveal the limits of the opponent and even finally defeat their enemy. Especially Frieza, who enjoyed using unorthodox and imaginative strategies to hurt Goku using his tail, his psychic powers, and his energy attack launched from his finger. The only reasons why Goku had survived until now was thanks to the multiple Zenkais he received after the fight against Vegeta and the intensive training he had on Broly's spaceship, which managed to raise his base power to 1,000,000 units, a huge amount compared to the 80,000 with whom he arrived on the planet Namek in the original version. And of course thanks to the Kaioshin, which he managed to master perfectly in a very short time, using it to its maximum power, x20, only in small intervals of time. A small time slot where he used the maximum multiplier of the Kaioshin only to attack and defend himself efficiently, virtually reaching the power of 20 million. However, that was nothing compared to Frieza's maximum power of 120 million. Ho ho ho. It is good that you have noticed, even if it is late. Well, what should I do with you now? Should I consider you a real threat and quickly end your agony, or should I kill more time until my subordinates kill your friends? What do you prefer? Frieza said, feeling generous and even magnanimous when giving him to choose the way in which he would be killed. But at the time when Goku was about to answer with some ingenious comment, since in Dragon Ball Z he wasn't completely stupid like in Super, where he suffered a boring involution. He felt a disturbance in the force. Chaos. 10. Goku yelled, realizing that 2 of his friends had been exterminated. But that wasn't the end of his worries. Soon after, he also felt the death of 2, not 3 Namekians who were with them. And that caused him to change his priorities. Shit. Piccolo, Krillin. I'm coming, Goku thought as he tried to use a great burst of speed to get away from this fight to help his friends. However. Wow. I think letting you escape wasn't among the options I gave you, said Frieza, who immediately caught up with Goku after ceasing to suppress his powers so much. Pam! And giving him a brutal kick, which crashed him precisely in the same place where he was before when Frieza asked him that question. And now. It's your turn to answer. Ho 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 ho. Frieza said, which landed right on top of Goku's head, crushing him against the ground, giving one more example of how sadistic and cruel it was. I can't waste my time fighting him, Goku yelled as he increased his strength with the Kaioshin and used another of his secret abilities. Genki Dama Broly version. Goku had taken advantage of the continuous pauses in which Frieza stopped fighting to brag and demonstrate how powerful, cruel, and intelligent he was to collect energy and store it inside his body to use it at the right time. However, Goku didn't imagine that he would use his last alternative to escape from one fight to join another. Oh my, do you still have unused strength? Frieza said, surprised to see that Goku was getting up even though he was using more force than he had estimated to prevent Goku from raising his head. Flash. And Goku, thanks to his impressive explosive speed created by the superposition of the 2 techniques, managed to free himself from Frieza's immobilization and hit him in the face. Crash. And after having used Frieza's spherical head as if it were a volleyball ball and throwing it against some mountains a kilometer further, Goku started the flight back to where Chaos and Ten's ki had disappeared. Piccolo and Nail are fighting another one very strong guys. Mutant Rashi is with those 2 scions. And Krillin is going to where they are. And that key. Vegeta. What is he doing here? Things are getting too complicated. But after flying several kilometers it stopped, colliding with a kind of wall. It was as if he had trapped in a force field, as if he were inside a golden sphere. fighting against me is so boring as not to show your true capabilities and try to run away at all times? Not. I don't think it's that. You are also one of those people capable of feeling the combat power without trackers, right? Maybe you have noticed that things are not going very well for your friends, and that is why you want to help them. Very moving, ho ho ho. But if this is all the power you have, as I feel, I'm afraid you won't even be able to see their corpses, Frieza said as he locked Goku in his imprisonment ball while playing with it as if it were a soccer ball while Goku was trapped inside. Frieza. Goku was screaming, trying to escape unsuccessfully from that telekinetic cage. Using the Kaioshin to the maximum, his power was 20 million, and adding the energy he had managed to collect by the Genki Dama Broly version, which was being consumed while using it, had only managed to increase his power to 45 million due to the low energy contained in this dying and uninhabited planet. Oh no. Master Roshi. Damn. Planet that became more dying and uninhabited for Goku after realizing that his sensei had also died. Bomb. Frieza got tired of playing with him, so he detonated the imprisonment ball. An explosion that wounded Goku, but hadn't yet lost his fighting spirit despite the harsh circumstances. Oh, you're still alive, what a pleasant surprise, Frieza said as he invited Goku to fight against him one more time. Goku had dared to hit him in the face, causing him to bleed slightly from the nose. So he wanted to make him pay for it with much pain. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. And Goku, who understood that this monstrous dwarf wouldn't let him leave without fighting, tried to continue with the combat. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. Pam. Plash. Palm. Rack. However. Palm. UHGGG. Palm. Ought. Off. It was useless. Frieza had released the vast majority of his power while Goku was running out of his. His only hope was an instant Zenkai that would make him increase his power to the maximum available for a Saiyan, which was 3 million, and then transform into a Super Saiyan, and that his enemy would give him time and opportunities to do all that in the middle of an invasion or death match. No. Cricklin. But. Flash. Ag. In this world where Akira Toriyama didn't have that much influence, those absurd and convenient conveniences don't exist. Fighting against you has been quite satisfactory. I haven't practiced in a long time. I was pretty untrained. Although unlike inferior beings like you, I have never trained, Frieza said after firing a ki beam from his finger, piercing Goku's stomach. Goku was seriously injured and had little strength left. But he refused to fall to the ground and feel completely defeated. It can't be, you too, Piccolo. But his situation and the death of his colleagues was destroying his morale. And before Goku could take a senzu bean that he had stored in his pocket. It is a pity that you don't belong in my army. I would offer you to work for me. But after the betrayal of Vegeta and his lackeys, I have reconsidered. There is no longer room for science in my ranks. Goodbye. Frieza stopped playing and threw a mortal ball at Goku, the same technique with which he destroys planets. Bomb! Completely disintegrating Goku and tens of kilometers of swamps behind him too. Well. And now I think it is time for you to tell me where the Dragon Balls are, Frieza said to Broly after cleaning the dust he had raised with his explosion of energy from his white body. It is a pity that you don't belong in my army. I would offer you to work for me. But after the betrayal of Vegeta and his lackeys, I have reconsidered. There is no longer room for science in my ranks. Goodbye. Frieza stopped playing and threw a mortal ball at Goku, the same technique with which he destroys planets. Bomb! Where am I? Have I died again? Will I have to see Enma again? Goku asked, which went from watching a giant energy sphere crash into his face to find himself in a very strange place. A completely white place that seemed to have no end. White place that strangely reminded him of a certain room that he supposedly used when he was little, but that was obviously invented for the convenience of the script in the Cell Saga. If they had had such a convenient room, they would have used it already before, when others tried to kill everyone. Yes and no, said Broly, who appeared in front of him by surprise to scare him. And at the same time Krillin, Rashi, Chaos, Ten Shinham, Piccolo, Ginger, Yam, Vegeta, Nail and the other filler Namekians also appeared behind him. Goku. I can't believe you're dead too, Krillin said when he saw that even Goku, with his numerous and powerful power-ups, had been killed as well. He was stronger than I thought. Sorry, Goku replied in a not very serious way, accepting having lost. And you, Broly? Why didn't you do anything? Reproached those who felt helpless and violated, while Broly, the most powerful being, simply saw them being tortured and killed. I already did things. See how pathetically you lost, just as I predicted would happen, resurrect you all and bring you to this dimension of mine, Broly replied emphatically, criticizing the criticism of his friends. And before almost everyone protested again when they saw the incredible passivity and indifference that Broly had for their lives. Did you think everything would turn out well as long as I was around? Did you think that I am your fucking guardian angel that only exists to solve your problems, shield you as if you were babies unable to survive on your own, give you everything you want and resurrect you when you've screwed it up? Is this how you see life? Letting Broly solve all the problems, and if Sir Broly isn't available, let Goku take care of it. And then we will use the Dragon Balls to camouflage our mistakes and stupidity? And you dare criticize me for letting you minimally expose yourself to the dangers you chose when I warned you about the consequences? Broly said, acting like the typical funny and understanding teacher when he saw that his class had abused his kindness. Harsh words that left the Z Warriors speechless, since deep down they knew that Broly was right. They had become too accustomed to depending on others and using magical methods to solve all their problems, uselessness and irresponsibility. So no one said anything, they just ducked their heads and nodded. Except Vegeta, who arrogantly dared to criticize the Z Warriors as well, although with some reason, since if it had not been for Broly and his intervention during the invasion to the Earth, a lot things would have been very different. Ha! Right. You really are. However, why Broly immediately silenced that cocky student who believed that he could show some kind of moral superiority before the rest of the classmates and scold them like his teacher. Shut up, Vegeta. The only reason I have resurrected you and those two girls that I like much more than you is because I owed you a resurrection. As with all of you. Wait, you mean? He tried to ask Piccolo in a hurry, since thanks to his incredible intelligence could intuit what Broly would say next. Yes. This will be the last time that I revive you for free. It is evident that you have ceased to have enough appreciation for your life and for the lives of others, since the price to correct your mistakes is quite cheap. And this will also be my last free lesson for you. The following will have to pay the right price, and you'll have to beg me. Broly said, showing his anger as he could read the thoughts of everyone. The thoughts they had during the invasion on Earth. The thoughts they had when he explained the great danger of coming to the planet Namek. The thoughts they had during the training trip to the planet Namek. The thoughts they had during the confrontation against Frieza and her acolytes. And of course the thoughts they were having now after having lost miserably. Clash. And with a snap of his fingers. Eesh. Where are all the others? Goku asked upon seeing that everyone had disappeared except for Broly and himself. I have moved each of you to a different place for your training. A training that will last a year for all of you, although for those who are out of here it will only take a second. Does this remind you of something? Broly said, explaining the situation to the ex-protagonist. Ag. It is true. No wonder this place was so familiar to me. Goku said, remembering hyperbolic time chamber. Perfect, I will avoid the explanation with you. For 1 year you will only train, sleep, eat and relieve yourself. Have I explained myself well? Broly said, heavily involved in his role of strict sergeant. Why? Yes sir. I will make sure to make myself as strong as possible to beat Frieza. Sir, Goku said, forming as if he were a recruit on his first day. Good, I like it. Despite the speech from before, you are one of the best. You are one of those who have complained the least. So I've found you a very interesting playmate, Broly said with a smile as he snapped his fingers again. Oh yeah. So will this be my playmate? Said a sinister voice, that surely belonged to a person who suddenly appeared behind Goku. Ah. You are. What are you doing here? No, wait, you look like him. But you are not him, Goku said, that when he turned around almost had a heart attack upon seeing who was behind him. You are very intuitive. He is Frost, let's say he is the Frieza of another universe. Years ago I defeated him and now he works for me. Since you have to face Frisia a year from now, I thought that fight against his version of another universe could be a good form of training, Broly said as he patted Frost's round head, something that made the former villain feel quite uncomfortable who was trying to play the tough guy in front of Goku. From another universe? Goku yelled for not understanding that disturbing information. So just like you told me, I only have to fight him all day except for the scheduled breaks to eat, shit, recover and sleep. I can also kill him, right? Frost said in a somewhat sadistic voice and expression. Yes, but remember that the objective of this training is for Goku to improve. You will have to give him a bit of an advantage, Broly said, hurting a little the feelings of Goku, who felt at that moment as if he were a child with a disability with whom they should be condescending. Yes, no problem. You know I like to play with my victims. Hoo. Frost said with the characteristic macabre and cruel smile of the Frost demons, either from this universe or from another. FIU. Splash. Ag. Plom. And without warning, Frost pointed his finger at Goku's heart and launched the characteristic energy attack of the Frost demons, killing him on the spot. And after 1 second. Arise. The hole in Goku's heart healed and he came back to life. And at the same moment in which he regained his consciousness. Goku felt an indescribably excruciating pain all over his body, as if millions of worms had just hatched inside his body and were feeding on his flesh. Search in YouTube for mango worms. In order for you to understand that the resurrection is not a resource that you must abuse, I have made each resurrection come with an indescribable pain. I hope this gives you a little incentive not to die. And to make sure you don't get used to the pain, which could make you lose certain incentives, the pain will increase as you get used to. I hope you don't get to the point where you die of resurrection pain, thus creating an infinite loop of death and resurrection. Ha, Broly said, explaining his terrifying way of encouraging his students as Goku convulsed and cried heartbreakingly while trying to self-injure to somehow camouflage the pain that Broly was causing him with his own, which was more pleasant. Ho. This is gonna be fun. You had a great idea, boss, said Frost, who was delighted to see another living being suffer. And after a few seconds, when the pain disappeared. I see. You want me to put my body and mind to the limit. Will we all train like this? Goku asked, trying to get up even though his legs still wobbled while worrying about his friends. Each one will have a personalized training, but specifically the other scions will follow a training similar to yours. So you better take it seriously if you don't want to be left behind. They are quite motivated and competitive. This will be a training that will destroy your bodies countless times to force your zenkais by someone not as kind as me, nor as strong as me either. It's okay to fight someone as strong as me, since it forces you to improve, but if it is an unattainable goal you can lose some motivation. Anyway, I will be reviewing your torture. Training. See you later. Broly said as he disappeared from that room, leaving behind Goku, who introduced himself to Frost. And to Frost, who looked at Goku as if he were a small herbivore devoid of claws and teeth with nowhere to escape. At that very moment. Elsewhere on the form realm. Hey, hi. Key off. You are hoi Krillin, Ten Shinhan, Chaos and Mutant Rashi were dying on the ground in the middle of a huge pool made of their own blood, convulsing as if they were being electrocuted. No. I can't believe it, he has beaten us with our own techniques. Who the hell is this guy? The 4 ex-corpses thought after remembering the traumatic event that preceded their second death that day. And in front of them, there was a middle-aged man, tall, incredibly muscular and with long wild black hair that danced in the air. A man with menacing eyes decorated by intimidating scars with which he looked at the human Z warriors with extreme disappointment. Come on, Midora-chan. I told you not to be especially hard on them, said Broly to one of his favorite henchmen, Midora, who had volunteered to help train the group of Earthlings. If you wanted mercy, it would be better if you had brought a Chiryu, not me, Midora answered dryly as he continued to look at the Z warriors with apathy. Ha. We both know that in the end he would have too much pity on them. I was forced to choose the lesser of the two evils. In addition, you are infinitely more apt for what I want to teach them, said Broly, excusing his choice for quite cruel and disturbing reasons. Broly, where did you find that monster? Ten Shinhan asked, who was completely overwhelmed and helpless before Midora. It was as if he were in a completely different universe from him. Broly, where did you find that monster? Ten Shin Han asked, who was completely overwhelmed and helpless before Midora. It was as if you were in a completely different universe from him. That doesn't matter. The only thing you should know is that he will be in your charge for a year. And I have to be honest with you. You will never beat him. And believe me, this is not reverse psychology to force you to improve, you cannot do it, you have already spent almost all your potential. The Patriarch already told you, he managed to get all the potential hidden in your body, Broly said, devoid of any empathy to the group of humans. Humans who began to assimilate that in the eyes of Broly and other of the many monsters that populated the universe they were only clever ants. However, despite that, not everyone wanted to accept that obviously correct opinion as an absolute fact, but you said. Yes, I know what I said, but no matter how much you improve your techniques. Even the best trained and skilled rabbit is incapable of defeating a normal bear. In the same way that every race and individual person has biological limits, limits that you have already reached, the techniques also have certain limits. Limits that will be impossible to exceed and that will make you lose when you have to face someone with a biological capacity far superior to yours and with a lower, equal to or greater technique than you. Accept it, you've practically hit rock bottom, Broly said, showing them once again the harsh reality. Almost everything has a limit and not everything could be overcome with a positive attitude and effort. So, what is the point of this suicide training? If we are not going to improve, what is all this for? Krillin asked, who was very frustrated and angry at everything that was happening. Was Broly just making them suffer so that they accepted once and for all that they had become ex-characters? Was he doing that to laugh at their weakness? To enjoy their pain? Because even though you have reached your physical limit, you still have possibilities to improve your skills and learn some new ones. That is why I have left you in charge of Midora. He is capable of learning any technique in a short time and I have advised him to defeat you with the same techniques you use to make you understand how to improve them, Broly said, explaining why he had chosen Midora for this job. And this training will be able to achieve that some rabbits like us can beat a bear? Asked Mutant Rashi, who was still self-conscious about that comparison. Maybe yes, maybe no. But at least it will help you sharpen your little teeth. And who knows, it is quite difficult, but if many rabbits join forces, work as a team, complement their techniques well, use their heads well and know how to find the weaknesses of the enemy, they might even be able to injure a powerful bear in the eye. Anyway, every time you have made remarkable progress as a team you will be rewarded with a new technique, which you can choose. As a welcome gift you can choose the Kaioshin that Goku uses. I leave you the instructions on that table. Midora, they are yours, Broly said, materializing virtual reality glasses in the restroom near there from where they could at certain times download knowledge of this universe directly into their brains. Yes, I will try that when they leave here they do not die without even having been able to fight, Midora said as he continued to look at the group without even blinking, intimidating the four even more than before. And the Z warriors, with a bittersweet taste on their palates, swallowed and stepped forward to once again face the unbreakable wall called Midora. But this time they would face him with other ideas in mind. Thanks to Broly's speech they had understood what to do and what to improve. Learn, improve and coordinate with each other to hunt like a herd, just like the ancestors of humanity did with prey bigger and more powerful than themselves. At that very moment. Elsewhere on the form realm. Palm. UHGGG. Palm. Ought. Off. Two green silhouettes moved at an imperceptible speed in the white landscape of the form realm, being only minimally visible in the short time interval in which they collided. Bomb. They collided with violence, creating thunders and flashes in confrontation, as if they had created a storm around that infinite white landscape. Bomb. Until finally that storm stopped. Hey Piccolo, how many times have you lost already? 543. And you haven't won a single time, right? Broly said with a mocking laugh as he ate fries and photographed with his brawlophone, trademark, another defeat of our favorite Namekian. If you already know, what are you asking me for? Piccolo shouted, who for obvious reasons was very upset with everything that was happening today. Piccolo-san, are you alright? Nail asked, who landed in front of Piccolo offering his hand to help him up. Ah. Since you fused with the other three, your power has become ridiculous. Piccolo said, accepting the help Nail had offered him. After Broly had explained to the 5 Namekians as well as the 4 Earthlings the obvious biological limitations they all had, depressing all of them in the process. However, he gave them a personalized training method. And unlike the Earthlings, Broly explained to the Namekians a way for their race to overcome their biological limitations. And that tactic was fusion, an assimilation technique where Namekians are able to permanently join themselves with other members of their race. When this is done, one of the Namekians serve as the base and gains the skills, memories, and many of the personality traits of the other. And in the case of Nail and the others, they all decided to merge with Nail, thus increasing their power in a spectacular way, reaching the not inconsiderable number of 81.000.000 units of power. As seen in Dragon Ball, this type of merger multiplies the power several times without a specific logic. Therefore, Piccolo, with less than 100,000 power units, was unable to do anything against Nail, even though he was courteously lowering his power level a lot to fight Piccolo in more or less equal terms. Are you really still insisting that you don't need my help? How many more times do they have to beat you to be satisfied? 1 million. Said Broly again, mockingly, while tweaking Piccolo's photo to make it resemble Yamcha's defeat against Cyberman. But suddenly Piccolo faced him and replied, "Do you think I'm not realizing your intentions? You're making me lose over and over against the fused Nail to convince me to use this stupid fusion too, right? If you want me to merge with them, forget it. And if your intention is for me to merge with Kami again, I think you can also forget about that stupid plan. Furthermore, I doubt that he agrees to merge with me, and I have serious doubts about what would remain of me after the fusion." Ha 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 ha, you caught me squarely. Don't worry, I didn't mean for you to merge with Nail and his team. I know you would not accept that unless you were in a very screwed up situation and they promised you 100% that you would be the administrator. As for Kami, it would be great if you reconciled. In this way you would become a first-rate Super Namekian, with a combat power not much different from Frisia's. If you also decided to join Nail, and I'm only talking about Nail, you would far exceed Frisia, even a normal Super Saiyan. Although I have to be honest, if you don't merge with Kami before he dies due to his advanced age, you will also die, so I advise you not to discard that probability, for your own good," Broly said, turning off his brawlophone to talk more seriously with Piccolo. "If I join Kami, will I be stronger than the boss of those monsters? Much stronger than Goku? Stronger than that character of legend that scares so much, that army of monsters?" Piccolo asked, who was beginning to rethink the possibility of merging with others. "Yes. But if you follow my advice, you may be even stronger than that, although you will need to wait some years for that. So I will ask it one more time, and I warn you that it will be the last. You need my help. Believe me, I have never insisted on something so much to anyone, much less for something that only benefits him," Broly said, giving an ultimatum to the best babysitter of Dragon Ball. And Piccolo, who was starting to get annoyed that everyone was getting stronger except him, succumbed to the temptation to make a pact with the devil. "Okay. I guess nothing bad will happen to listen to you. You're going to give me a strange ability like Gohan, or one of poorer quality like the others. You finally say something nice. No, none of that. I'm just going to give you some advice so that with your own abilities you can reach almost an infinite potential. You are just such an idiot that you haven't even noticed," Broly said in a rather derogatory way, using a somewhat risky teaching method on a rebellious student. However, this rebellious student, despite having been offended by his words, really needed to learn that supposed method, so he tried to ignore certain comments and decided to ask again, "And, what's that method? Oh, don't you know? Do you want me to give you a clue?" Broly said, teasing Piccolo in an insane and exhilarating way as Nail watched the disgusting and irritating face Broly was making when asking what. "Spit it out. You are the one who wants to say it," Piccolo shouted with great anger for more than obvious reasons. Okay, if you insist so much. You know the method by which Namekians reproduce, right?" Broly asked as he began to reveal the secret with the Socratic method. "Of course. We can reproduce by spitting out an egg through our mouth. What does that have to do with your method?" asked Piccolo, who calmed down after that outburst of anger, but he began to believe that he would repeat the same scene if he didn't get a quick answer. Easy, you only need to think, answer and think again. And why don't Namekians generally lay a lot of eggs? If you have such a convenient method of reproduction, shouldn't there be many more Namekians on the planet Namek after hundreds of years after the apocalypse? Broly asked again in a Socratic way. And question was the one that made Piccolo suddenly go into shock. HGGGGG. No. Don't tell me what. And since Piccolo seemed to be catatonic and therefore was unable to say anything, Nail, who was still there, tried to answer. "It is obvious. There is a price to pay every time a Namekian breeds. If it had not, it would be the most populated race in the entire universe, and one of the most powerful, something that would be against nature. Every time one of us lays an egg, we have to pay with our life expectancy." Correct answer Nail, 10 points for Namek. But Piccolo, Could you say out loud what you've already understood? Broly said, satisfied that he didn't have to explain everything. His saliva and time were valuable. Are you implying that thanks to my eternal youth there is no limit of eggs that I can hatch by creating an unlimited number of Namekians with whom I can then merge and become stronger without any limit? Piccolo yelled as he felt the dire need to make sure if that fucking madness was possible or not. He couldn't believe that such a convenient method existed right under his nose and that he hadn't used it before. Bingo. You are right, Piccolo. Thanks to the Dragon Balls that your technically half-father created and the wish that your technically father asked for, you have managed to spawn your own race. You just need to create a descendant like your old man, but without strange mutations. They will not be compatible with you, a Namekian descendant with good combat power but without any intelligence or personality. In short, a strong golem made of Namekian genes and put it to train. When it reaches a good level you just have to control it, make it merge with you. And repeat that process over and over and over and over again. Although you should not expect the same increases in power that Nail has achieved. Since they will be your direct descendants and since they have no soul, the increase in power will not be as substantial, but as a positive point you will avoid some compatibility problems and you will be able to absorb all you want as many times as you want. Although I advise you not to absorb many at once and train them beforehand or you will have problems in your body. It is like going through a surgical operation, you will need time to adapt to the new organs. There is also the problem that your body will get used to mergers, so merging with weak descendants will have no effect at some point, so you will need to train them better and for longer each time for the fusion to have an effect on your power level. Even so, in a matter of time you will be able to increase your power to unsuspected limits, and having eternal youth you have time to spare. In short, you have a greater potential than Goku, I guarantee that. Are you still envying his Zenkai? Broly said, explaining in greater detail the definitive power-up that was hidden in Dragon Ball and that Toriyama did not know or did not want to show. However, Piccolo was barely listening. The feeling of euphoria of knowing that him and only him had such amazing ability. And at the same time, the euphoria was partially offset by the stupid complex he felt towards himself for not having considered this method before. A wonderful method that could only belong to him, but unfortunately for him it had to be Broly who discovered it. With this method, maybe, after a few years, I can become stronger than Broly. Piccolo shouted like a mad genius who had had a great evil plan, that would surely fail. And after a few hours, when Piccolo stopped that crazy genius laugh, he started to get eggs out of his mouth as if there was no tomorrow. From those eggs approximately 10 copies of Piccolo hatched and without saying a word they began to train following Piccolo's orders. This is crazy. Nail yelled, having been in a catatonic state for a long time just like Piccolo before, but for somewhat different reasons. Yes it is. We better get out of here. She just became a mom, surely she will want to spend time alone with her children. Ha 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 ha. Her destiny is to be a babysitter. Broly said, laughing over and over at his own bad jokes. Okay. Nail replied as he reflected on the obvious moral and logical problems that were taking place there. And especially about the consequences that these events would bring to the world. Ha 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 ha. I will be invincible. Piccolo yelled, who seemed to have gone completely crazy. Namek Planet. Moments after Frieza disintegrated Goku. Well. Now I think it is time for you to tell me where the Dragon Balls are, Frieza said to Broly after cleaning the dust he had raised with his explosion of energy from his white body. Yes. Why not? There is no problem telling you where I have hidden the Dragon Balls. It's what I had promised. Broly said, trying to hide his smile, a smile as or more evil than the one Frieza was using to speak to him. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.